Welcome back to another episode of Searching for MacGuffin with your hosts, George.
Gabe.
And Link.
And Dan.
Oh, wow. I didn't know you were. I forgot you're here. How are you?
I'm okay.
Annyeong, Danny-san.
Yeah, I think when Link said and Link, it's hard to add another and after that.
That's true.
No,
Yeah.
and me. I'm here too.
I'm glad to hear your voice.
It's
Dan.
and Link, semicolon, and Dan.
Yeah.
That's not how grammar works.
Well, transitioning to today's topic for the episode.
Did you just literally say transitioning to?
Yeah, what was it supposed to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just transitioned to it. I don't think you call out like an audible, like a play.
Oh, well, I did.
Okay,
And
go
here
ahead.
we are.
Transition.
Today's topic. Sorry, what?
Dan's still here.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm still here.
I
Annyeong.
gotta get used to this. All right, so today's topic is about the console wars.
That was a good transition.
Yeah, it was good because he didn't just yell out transition here.
Transitioning to my next topic. Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about the console wars, basically how they started, what the history is, where the term even kind of comes from, and our own history with consoles in general
Yeah, video games.
and video games, and where we are today and what the future looks like.
What is a console war?
Dang it, Siri!
Well, hi Siri. Siri's going to talk to us. She's going to
So
transition
we
to our
have
next segment.
Dan, the producer, and Siri joining us in this on this podcast, on this episode.
We're off to a great start, guys. Dan just laughing maniacally.
Maniacal laugh.
So, what is a console war, guys?
It's when these two consoles get into an arena
Mm-hmm.
and they basically turn into battle bots and they fight each other to the death.
I thought it was gonna be like a dance battle.
Mm.
I'm gonna
Ooh,
be
I
honest
like
with
that.
you.
That's the E-rated version.
Yeah,
That's a
bo-
Nintendo one.
Both of those scenarios actually sound better than what we're gonna talk about.
Searching for MacGuffin battle console.
Dance
Console
wars.
dance war.
Mm.
All right, I guess to get an understanding of how we got here, I guess I'll give a really like brief recap
Mhm.
of the console wars, at least what I know about it. And if you're looking for a resource to understand like what this original console war is, to get kind of a understanding of the reality of where we live in today, there's a really great book called Console Wars. Ironically, or no, that's not ironic. That's exactly what you would expect it to be. That kind of outlines the battle between Sega and Nintendo, which is the original console war. What do you guys know about Sega versus Nintendo just growing up? I know you guys kind of came up, years after the war, but it's kind of a big historical thing. What do you think of when you think of this?
I think
Sonic
of
versus Mario.
yeah, that's a good one. And Nintendo destroying Sega.
I just remember, I think it was just the first actually I remember Sega from Sonic. That's pretty much my own memory, and the Dreamcast. That's about it.
I do not like the Sonic games. They make no sense to me.
W-
And I remember hating them. Like, this game is stupid.
unpack that.
It's
yeah.
just, the mechanics of it doesn't make. It's just going really it just doesn't make sense to me.
He runs fast.
That's it. Like, yeah, it's like, wait,
That's-
It feels real
That's his
linear,
thing.
right?
yeah, it's like, what am I? I want more control. So I don't know. They don't make sense to me.
The
I don't
game
know
is
how
like-
I don't even know how they work. I tried playing them. They don't make sense. I give up.
They don't make sense is like a hot take.
Yeah.
do not
play
like-
Sonic Mania.
Ooh, Sonic Mania is really good.
I don't know. I've
Yeah.
played one. Did not.
Oh, so I'm a console wars kid, meaning I literally grew up in this era in the 90s. I mean, you could trace it back to the 80s, but like I grew up at the height of this. So for me, like playing Sonic Mania on a Nintendo Switch is like still blows my mind to this day.
See,
That's awesome. I think
Nintendo
that's
won.
awesome, man.
Nintendo won.
Well, Sega wins too. Like, I mean, in a
So they're
sense.
making some money.
Exactly. So, anyways,
I think it's interesting that you had a console war when you were a kid,
yeah.
and Gabriel and I had a console war when we were kids,
Mm-hmm.
growing up in the 2000s.
Yeah, it's basically, I assume it's just like how Sony and Microsoft are doing right now, right?
Yeah,
much,
pretty
yeah.
much.
Back
yeah.
then.
Yeah. So, really briefly, in the early 80s, right before the NES, right, which is kind of like where gaming starts at least for my generation, there was a big console crash because there was like a bunch of old consoles, Atari and like ColecoVision.
Pong.
Yeah, Pong is not a console, but I think it played on an Atari, so that's a
Oh,
good.
okay,
That
my
is a
bad,
good
my bad.
example, though.
What was it? Koa?
Galactica.
The TurboGrafx 16, ColecoVision. I'm
ColecoVision.
pretty sure I didn't make that up. I'm almost certain. But it was actually a flooded market, and because of that, there was a console crash. So the NES comes out, or the Famicom, in Japan in '84, but it takes a couple of years before we get it here in the United States. So the NES, which was the rebranding of the Famicom, debuts around '89, and like everybody goes crazy about it. And I think we talked about it in the holiday special. There's that film, 8-Bit Christmas, that kind of details the rush and to get this console and how limited it was.
Wait, was that one the NES or SNES?
That was the NES in
Okay.
'89, right?
No. For the movie.
Yeah, it was the
NES.
NES. It was
NES.
the NES.
Oh, okay.
But my experience starts around the SNES, which actually, I was actually watching the Console Wars documentary, which is based on the book. It's on Paramount Plus. This might be the only time I plug something on Paramount Plus.
That one's produced by Seth Rogen and Evan
Goldberg, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
you wouldn't tell if you watch it because it's pretty cut and dry. I honestly expected more.
No one's high.
No, and there's no jokes for the most part. And actually, the book, I highly recommend the book because I read the book, and I actually taught it in high school in like an AP course. It was one of the like nonfiction selections that the students could pull from, and it was pretty fun because it's like a narrative driven.
Yeah.
It's like a story. It's not like a nonfiction. Yeah, so you go like from the perspective of the people, and I'll talk about it really quick.
The author
in a
takes
second.
creative licenses.
Yes, exactly. So it's cool because it's a story, but this is like a straight dry documentary. And I remember at that time, and that was like 6 years ago, I think. At this point, at that time, we were really looking forward because we had heard that Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg had signed for the rights to make this.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, they're gonna make the movie, and it's supposed to come out next year.
Yeah, and Seth Rogen's gonna play Miyamoto.
Yeah, I don't think that's what they were gonna do.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
But the movie never came out, and then it got released on Paramount Plus 2 years ago as a documentary, and I was like, that's not what I thought the project was going to be. But whatever. Anyways, so just a few short years later, in '92, comes out the SNES. So there was only a couple of years between them, and there wasn't really, there were Sega consoles. A lot of people think the Genesis is the first Sega console, but
I mean, the name. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, is the Xbox One the first Xbox?
Thought it was Xbox to the first
Yeah,
square.
yeah. So it's all marketing, right? Because the Genesis was a new beginning for Sega. It was actually their third or fourth, almost certain it was their fourth attempt at making a hardware, but they went hard and they began to be in direct conflict with Nintendo. So Nintendo had 95% of the market share around this time when Sega enters. And what really gains them success, and this is all outlined in the book and the documentary. So again, check it out if you want to know more, if you want to read 20 hours of it or watch an hour and a half.
20 hours.
I don't know how long the book is, but it was pretty long. So Sega hires this guy, Tom Kalinske. Do you remember this, Link, from the book?
Yeah, the guy that he's very not inspirational, influential when
Yes.
it comes to a lot of the toys. I mean, I'm assuming in your time.
Yeah, he was the head of Mattel.
Yes.
And he was like the brain behind the first job he had before he went to Mattel was Flintstones vitamins. And I don't know how iconic that is for you guys.
Hated those things.
Why?
They tasted terrible.
Yeah, but you know what? They
Yeah, but
tricked.
you still had them, right?
I was forced to have them. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, because they convinced parents that kids wanted them. So, but when I was a kid, they convinced me that they were delicious because the Flintstones were on it, right? So they had a huge marketing boom. That was his brainchild, Flintstones vitamins. So then he went to Mattel, and then he was behind Barbie. At the time, Barbie sales were fading, and then his idea was basically him and his team, obviously, but he headed like, let's put her in space, let's get her a Malibu house, let's make her a flight
He was
attendant.
behind. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So it was like, we can't sell any more Barbies, and they're like, you can if she can do every job in the world.
Let's just make her Wonder
White
Woman.
horses.
Barbie was the first multiverse.
The Barbie multiverse.
Multiverse, yeah.
And then he made He-Man. I mean, he didn't make it, but he marketed the He-Man toys, and we know how.
Wait, wasn't the toy first, then the cartoon?
Oh, I don't know what the timeline is because obviously this isn't the He-Man episode, but I don't know which one came out first. But the show is definitely to sell the toy.
Okay.
So I don't know, I don't know which came first, but definitely in the mind the toy is first. You know what I mean? They might have launched the show before the toy.
They made the show to sell the toy.
Oh yeah, that was totally like
That's
a
what they would
trend.
do back then, yeah.
G.I. Joe, Transformers, they were toy concepts first, and then television shows. And sometimes the shows would come out to first, and then they'd hit you with the toy. But like for example, they made The Mandalorian, right, to sell Baby Yodas. Clearly, that's the only reason why
that
that
is
show
true. I
exists.
understand.
Yeah.
Nah, you should put into context. I get it.
Exactly. So I know we grew up with Pokemon, for example. Pokemon's basically just an
Mhm.
anime made to sell a game.
Manga.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
It's like deep marketing,
Mhm.
like because it gets into your tendrils.
So this guy's just brought on for marketing.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
a marketing
He's the guy
genius.
that makes things. Okay, cool.
Yeah, because Hot Wheels. He made Hot Wheels a name brand, at home, like a
Mhm.
household name. Because like there was cars and there was
Dude's
shows,
just
there was
like King
really
Midas.
honestly, what's special about Hot Wheels? Like nothing. It's just
The
they
fact that I can have a Batmobile Hot Wheel.
well, now you can because of the marketing genius of Tom Kalinske at Mattel. So yeah, he is King Midas, like you mentioned, but at this point, almost untouchable. So they bring him over to Sega, and he implements something that is going to shape the video game market for generations, and it's this economic principle of the razor and blade. Are you guys familiar with this? You know what this is?
Maybe not the
those
terms. but-
Bones?
No, not the Motorola Razor. I had one of those. So the concept is, and this is like I literally lived this because I had like Dollar Shave Club. So you guys know about Dollar Shave Club, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it's like the razor itself is like either cheap or free because once they got you, then they can sell you the blades forever.
Mm.
I know.
So- So the concept is he takes over Sega and he undercuts the price of Nintendo
by a lot.
by a lot so that they lose
Like
money.
$100,
Yeah,
right?
$100. So they lose money every time they sell a Sega Genesis, but everyone now has a Sega
Sega
Genesis,
Genesis.
and they can sell you games for all eternity.
Those are the blades.
And that's how consoles to this day still make money. PlayStation, Xbox, they don't make any money on selling their consoles. They make money on selling you games. So they take a loss, especially when you include overhead and like development costs and all of that. It's not just the hardware itself that they're taking a loss, but they're taking an even deeper loss in marketing and all of that. Marketing, they spent a lot of marketing on the Sega Genesis, and they technically never got it back, but they did overall.
So I think in my head, I'm trying to like put this into perspective. Would you say it's kind of like how A-List works with AMC? How they take the loss with
On
the
the
film and the
tickets.
tickets
Mhm.
to get you to get concessions and
Absolutely.
okay.
But even more so, I think, because with A-List, it's almost like a risk factor.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a gym where they charge you, but they don't expect you to actually show
Yeah.
up. They expect you to buy popcorn and snacks, but you don't have
You
to.
don't have to.
You literally, what's the point of having a Sega
Let's say if
Genesis
you're not gonna play
If
games.
you don't have
Yeah.
games. Exactly. What's the point of having a Razor if you don't buy blades for
Guy's
it?
a genius, bro.
So this becomes like essential, and they actually make a huge dent, and at some point are ahead of Nintendo. And they go back and forth, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and this console war is heated. I think this was my first experience with tribalism because in the 90s, everyone was on sides. And I've seen this emergent lately, but it was like Marvel versus DC, Sega versus Nintendo, like WCW versus WWF, like
Mm.
you
AEW versus WWE.
exactly, and there you go. So it's risen again, right?
There's
We're
still
back.
people on that other side.
Yeah, there are still
The other
people
side being-
stand up for WWE.
Am I standing? You want me to stand? I'll
Yeah,
stand up
go
right
ahead
now.
and stand up.
Wait,
So-
for WWE?
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
You know the stand up for WWE.
This
people.
household is AEW household.
Okay, thank you. The house that
Well, this is
the house that Cody built.
The-
Anyways, so
I'd say Tony.
the the console wars ends in about around 95, or at least it starts to end when Sony enters the market. A third brand, a disruptor, CD based,
Not a
Cartridge?
not cartridge,
Mm.
right? And with hot new properties that were previously unexplored. I'll always remember the PlayStation commercial, like the graphics, Jurassic Park, Crash Bandicoot, Tomb Raider.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy? Or was that
Yeah,
before?
Final Fantasy.
Or was that before?
Because that was a big part. No, that was a big part of Sony gaining such a foothold in the market because Nintendo loses Final Fantasy because they decide to stick with cartridge.
Yeah.
So there's one more console generation that goes head to head. The PlayStation is emergent. Sega produces the Sega Saturn. And Nintendo sticks with cartridge for N64, and Nintendo loses more and more of the market, while Sega, in one desperate attempt to one up, creates a system ahead of the current generation at that time, and it was their final system, the Sega Dreamcast.
What do you mean by that?
Yes.
That it was.
So basically, like, you could compare PlayStation. Oh, so PlayStation and Saturn were both 32-bit.
Yeah.
Right? But N64, like, Nintendo skipped the 32-bit
And they went 64.
because the SNES's lifespan like was extended. Like, they were still doing good at 16,
Mhm.
so they skipped ahead to 64. And so that was basically the competition. It was Sony and Saturn at 32 bits, and then N64 at 64, but on cartridge. So the graphics were supposedly more advanced, but the space that they had for game size and processing was limited.
Mhm.
So a game like Final Fantasy VII didn't fit on a cartridge, and they had to go multi-disc on the PlayStation because they had that option.
Mm.
So that was basically that three-way, the end of the console wars, or you could say that the war by introducing a third party.
World War One.
Yeah,
The prequel wars.
yeah, that's pretty good. World War One. Sega thinks, oh, I'm just gonna jump ahead and I'm gonna bring arcade level gaming to the home, and they create the superpowered. I don't even know it. There's no such thing as like a 128-bit system because the infrastructure for those systems, that's it. Graphical bits is no longer the term. It's processing power, CPU,
Yeah.
GPU. You know what I mean? It's and for all intents and purposes, it was kind of like an at-home computer. It had a web browser for the first time, I believe. It had online connectivity.
Wait, what?
Yeah. It had
Wow.
online connectivity. It played movies. Okay, it supported the VCD format, which I remember importing a bunch of Chinese discs over the internet.
And this is what, the Sega Genesis?
This is the
Dreamcast.
Wow. I did not know it did all that stuff.
Yeah, neither did I, and that was like the first system that I ever played.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought, the Dreamcast was just meant for Crazy Taxi.
Crazy Taxi.
Such a great game, bro.
Wow.
And the soundtrack, amazing.
I'm gonna be honest. Dreamcast is one of my favorite consoles of all time, and I think it gets lost in the shuffle because its lifespan was so short. But it had stellar games, and I remember playing Soul Calibur on it.
I think that was my first experience.
Yeah. And that game looked just as good at home for the first time as it did at the arcade. And that just was mind blowing.
And I remember with playing Soul Calibur, I remember they had the little avatars in the square on the controller,
Mm-hmm.
and they would like
That
either
was cool, yeah.
Oh yeah, the VMUs. That's
Mhm.
yeah. You could use them to like walk, kind of like a Poké Walker. You could use that. You could load data because it was like a memory card and also like an LCD companion. You could put stats on it. Like
yeah.
you could kind of use it as a second screen. It was crazy. It was
If Sega invented such a great console with the Dreamcast, why is it that, and it was better than its competition?
Yeah, in my
why
opinion, yeah.
Why does it lose then to inferior
Yeah.
consoles?
It was too little, too late. They had the Sega Saturn was a flop,
Mm.
which I actually think the Sega Saturn was a pretty strong system too. I remember I didn't have it, but your father, Gabe, actually had it,
Mm.
and we would have like party nights where like virtual fighters and games like that. But it didn't make a blip, and there was a couple of other failures like the Sega CD expansion pass. Um, back when we used to add physical hardware to systems, right? So they kind of flopped.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
The Sega Saturn isn't flashy.
Yeah, it is
It's
not.
ugly.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And it had good games, but it didn't have like a plethora of good games, and they moved on really quickly.
It wasn't impressive.
Yeah, it got swallowed up in this three-way battle with Nintendo, which had lost significant market share, but still had their diehards. You
Yeah.
know, their Nintendo is always going to have their fans because they're going to have those properties that you can't play anywhere else. And then Sony was the new hot, sexy adult console. You know what I mean? If you want a T-Rex to tear you apart or play Mortal Kombat or things like that.
Mm.
So Sega came out with it and nobody bought it right away because they had already lost the trust of the consumer.
Mm.
And then they bailed on it. They bailed on it pretty quickly. I remember buying my first Dreamcast for about $50, and I loved it so much that I bought a second Dreamcast because I'm like, they're not in the hardware business anymore. When my Dreamcast breaks, will I have another Dreamcast? So that's the end of that first console war. Sega decides to become a developer, and we're left with just Nintendo and Sony.
I kind of wish Sega would have stayed making consoles because I feel like Nintendo needs that competition.
That's interesting. Unpack that.
I don't know. I feel like Nintendo's always dominated their own market. I wish they had more competition.
Well, go ahead.
Because they share the market with. I mean, we'll get into this later, but they share that market with Sony and Microsoft.
Mm-hmm.
I wish they had competition from their end.
But you know what? They did have competition, except at this point. This is a turning point for Nintendo because they kind of take their own approach to the gaming system, and they start implementing what's known as a blue ocean strategy. And what that means is that they're looking for new undiscovered areas in gaming to create a niche market. So they're no longer going head to head. At this point, Nintendo says, you know what? We're not going to outspec the competition. In fact, we're going to undercut them in specs, and we're going to take gaming in new directions. So they start to get real crazy.
Innovative.
Yeah, with their ideas. Sometimes innovative, sometimes a little kooky. I remember my Game Boy having a printer,
Yeah.
and it created stickers. Okay.
And you can take pictures too with your Game Boy.
Yeah, the Game Boy camera.
And then you can also print out those pictures as
Yeah.
well.
I remember like a card scanner on my Game Boy Advance, right? Where you could. Did you ever have one of those?
I remember that. I
Yeah.
never had it. I know you had it. But
Yeah.
you can scan like
Cash App, bro.
scan games, right?
Yeah, you could literally scan games. Yeah, they had like the original Donkey Kong on a card that you would scan like a QR code, like an equivalent, something like that, and then you would just play Donkey Kong.
Oh, I've
So you
never
had
seen
like
that.
a card. What?
I never saw that.
You never saw that?
I'm
No?
trying to remember. I feel like maybe.
I know you had it, so that's how I know about it.
Yeah.
But I didn't use it much.
Yeah, well, like I had the scanner because it had other uses, but I remember the games. I was like, I'm not gonna rebuy these games, like they're classic games. But then when that kind of flopped, they all went on like sale.
Yeah.
So I got like all the games. So I had like all these cards that you would just swipe. Boom, you play Donkey Kong. Boom, you play the original Mario Brothers. Boom, yeah, and like just it was crazy.
That
like,
is crazy to me.
yeah, especially at that time. So
Yeah,
nowadays,
it's like we still use that kind of technology,
Exactly.
like with Cash
Yeah.
App, like Squarespace and stuff like that.
mm-hmm, absolutely. So they got kooky and they got crazy and they started carving out their own. So I mean, I see where you're coming from, Dan, but I don't know if Sega was ready to compete like that. you
Oh
know?
no, for sure. I mean, if their previous consoles had done better, then maybe. But
Mm-hmm. With that being said, though, I have enjoyed the fruits of Sega being a developer,
that is true.
and being multi-platform. I don't know that if I would have ever been able to finish the Shenmue series if they weren't, funded by another, game console or studio. Or that we would have had the mashups that we live in today with Mario and Sonic.
I think that's the only Sega thing I play. Mario, Sonic in the Olympics, and maybe Smash Bros.
Yeah, and Smash Bros.
with
Of
the
course.
Sonic. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you've never played Sonic Adventure 1 and 2?
What?
Those games don't make sense
That's
to me.
crazy.
Bro.
No, Sonic Adventure
come
makes sense. It's not
on.
anything like
Yeah.
the Sonic games. The 3D ones.
Okay, yeah, the 2D ones make
No,
sense.
no,
The
no.
3D
Sonic
ones I've never
Adventures,
played.
they're both for the Dreamcast, but Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, the upgraded version, got very popular on the GameCube,
Man,
on the
those
Nintendo
games are so
GameCube.
Mm.
Yeah, it was. Those are excellent games.
What was the other
especially
game?
two.
Sonic, was it Riders?
Sonic Riders, yeah, that's when they're on
remember
like
Sonic
on the
Riders.
boards. Yeah. So, you guys were telling me about a little console war that I guess I wasn't as in tune with. So I'm gonna let you guys take over it before we get to our modern console war. What was it like, the DS versus PSP war?
So yeah, so in the PSP, with the PSP, Sony enters the handheld game, which is something that had to this time been dominated by Nintendo for the past 20 years,
Yeah,
right?
I
With the
mean,
N6,
easily.
Yeah.
with the I'm
Yeah.
sorry, N64, with
Just
the
try holding that around.
yeah.
Game Boy.
with the
The
Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance.
Well, we did have a mini console war, and it's funny because when you think about handhelds, they're not consoles per se, but Sega had their Game Gear in the '90s. I don't know if you've ever seen the Game Gear.
Yeah.
Have you
I,
guys?
I
ever-
know about it, yeah.
but you've never like
I never,
held it.
yeah, I
played
never
for
had
it.
to play it. Yeah.
This thing had like 6 AA batteries, and it was a gas guzzler. They actually had this system. This is crazy. It was called the Nomad, and it played Game Gear and Genesis games. So Nintendo was like, they did compete with Sega even in the handheld market.
but
yeah.
yeah.
It was the Cold War, nothing to this extent.
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it, actually.
Yeah.
So what happened with the PSP?
I mean, growing up
Mm-hmm.
with the DS, I mean, I'm not sure about you, Danny, but growing up it was a DS versus a PSP, and I was always a DS person. I've always been a Nintendo person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a handheld person. I do.
Right.
If I have to choose between a console or something handheld, I would choose handheld because of the portability. I
Yeah.
love that. I love being able to play anywhere I want. That's how I grew up because my first video game console was Game Boy Color.
Mm-hmm.
So I just that's part of me who I am as a gamer. But the PSP comes, PlayStation Portable, and they get that market that Nintendo doesn't have, like the older people, right? And they release games that Nintendo doesn't really have.
Mhm.
I know they released some GTA
Yeah.
on the PSP. They
Yeah, I
released
remember that.
Final Fantasy.
Final
right?
Fantasy,
Yeah.
the Godfather
They
game,
had
which was
Battlefront.
amazing.
Battlefront. No,
That's right.
Battlefront was the one that I
Battlefront, yeah.
remember.
Big
Just
one,
like
yeah.
playing.
And not
it-
only that, you also had like your sports games like Madden
Yeah.
and
For the
2K
first time, a real
for-
experience.
yes, on handheld with great graphics.
Yeah.
Not like
Yeah,
the
that-
graphics in for the
The DS was always like this, like,
terrible, yeah.
And then Super Nintendo version
Yes,
of
because
modern gaming.
I grew up playing Madden. I love football. So I remember playing the Madden game on the DS. I'm like, wow, these
Right.
graphics are atrocious.
But I also
Mhm.
think that, I mean, I don't know. I wasn't too familiar with any other games that wasn't like touch base on
Mhm.
the DS. I'm sure there was, but a lot of the games that I did play when the DS came out was like what, Trauma Surgeon. A lot of
I
those games
remember
where you
Yeah,
have to
Trauma
touch
Center, yeah.
Center, yeah.
Trauma Center. And then because that with the PSP, I remember I think it was you or your brother, both of you had
Yeah, we
one.
both had, yeah.
Yeah.
He got me to get one.
And one of you had like the Star Wars, it was like all white with like a Darth Vader on the back of it.
Yes. Oh,
That
I
thing
forgot
was so
about
sick.
that.
And so because I don't know, like for me, I guess I would consider myself more of a console player.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was like, I mean, I had a Game Boy Color, I had a Game Boy SP, and I loved it.
Yeah.
But I think I did differentiate the two, because it's like, one, I can go
Yeah.
play at the doctor's office while I'm waiting, or
Yeah.
my mom's shopping or something like that, and the other one is like I exclusively play at home,
Yeah.
and or like with family and friends and stuff like that. The handheld for me is probably like a bit more personal.
Mm-hmm.
And the DS, I think the DS kind of changed that too, because you were able to connect with friends and play like Mario Kart and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But as far as like with the PSP, I was able to play those console level type games
Yeah, graphics.
in my
Awesome.
hand
In
and
your
take
hand,
that.
Yeah.
And I remember, I mean, that's the only time I ever played Pro Evolutionary Soccer.
Right.
But like I remember that
And
was
I remember you talked great about PES for years.
Yeah,
because of
that was
experience.
such a fun time for me, and I think I had only played FIFA maybe like around '06
Mhm.
a couple of times, but that was later on when I got another console. But I guess that was because those sports games, especially like FIFA and PS, are like that's typically what I would play.
Right.
So I'm now remembering it's like PS is probably I played that before FIFA.
hmm
Um,
I
so
remember being super proud of you at that time because you're like, I love PES. And I was like, that's what the game magazines say is the better soccer game. Everybody plays FIFA.
because I think it
but my
was.
nephew plays E PES.
No, I think it was. I think at the time it was it was a better game. But I think they dropped off in quality, and FIFA definitely stepped it
Mhm.
up eventually.
Yeah.
Even though where we are now is a different story completely. But
The football episode.
So yeah, so because of that, you had the I think the PSP was sort of older generation,
Mhm.
older audience, more mature.
Yeah.
Games are more mature. Graphics were a lot better, right? So you have these two companies fighting against different graphics, right?
Yeah.
Nintendo with their DS, they're going for the younger audience, right?
Mhm, absolutely.
Children,
Yeah.
me,
Children and Link.
right? I'm assuming they also got Danny, who was I'm not sure how old you were.
Okay,
Danny.
you know what? That's a good point though, because that's their demographic: children and adults who grew up playing these games.
Yeah.
because it's people, whatever generation you are. If you're a Nintendo kid, you never stop being a Nintendo.
You never
kid.
stop, yeah.
Yeah. I started with the DS. I had the original silver clunky DS.
Yes,
Mhm.
And then
that was ugly.
towards
What was
middle
that-
school though, I only used my PSP.
Yeah, it's when you got older, you realize,
Yeah.
oh, these DS games are kind of boring.
Because,
I like the
yeah,
more
I wanted
mature.
to play Battlefront. I wanted to play
bro, you weren't playing 30 hours of dogs or pets,
I
whatever
never-
that game
I-
was
yeah,
called.
well, okay.
Nintendogs.
Nintendo.
Nintendo?
I
Dogs?
did play Nintendogs,
I
but
love Nintendogs.
Yeah, he actually 110% at Nintendo. So in your face, buddy. I had both. Did everybody here have both?
I played
Yes.
the PSP because you let me. I only played one game with it, and that was the Godfather game, which you
Mhm.
let me, and I
Yeah.
really enjoyed it.
No, yeah, I used your
That was
PSP.
later on.
And then
Everybody used my.
I'm
PSP.
pretty sure I bought like every generation of the DS.
Okay.
Like, from there.
And
Yeah.
that's because the PSP was a lot more expensive.
Yeah, it really
than
was,
the
and the
DS.
games were expensive.
Yeah, the game more expensive. Yeah.
yeah.
And because it was more expensive, and you had to be older to buy one, right?
Right. Yeah.
Not that you had to be older, but it was like that
was
was the
for
intent.
Yeah, but a lot of the
demographic.
games that they had were for mature, like
Mature
not
audience,
mature
yes.
audiences.
So when it comes to like buying video games, who's gonna buy more? Parents for children or adult people?
Yeah.
And
or
that's
for
what ended up,
themselves.
or for themselves,
Yeah.
right? And that's what ended up happening. Like the DS destroyed the PSP in competition,
Yeah.
sales wise, because everyone for Christmas was getting a DS.
Yeah, man. Like
Every year you were getting
everyone
a different
here-
DS.
I
Yes,
still,
yes.
I mean, I still remember that. Like that brought some of the joy, I guess, because it's like Christmas. You'd either get like games or something. But like as a kid who liked video games,
Yeah.
you're typically getting like a game. But when those DSs came out, it was like you see that rectangular box.
That's
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you know
it's a
what's
DS.
coming.
Yeah.
And with the PSP, I think it was harder, but I also think I was interested in the DS way more. I mean, I was young at the time,
Yeah.
and I was like, any game that I do want to play,
Yeah.
like Pro Evolutionary Soccer or Battlefront, you had the PSP, and it was kind of like we were switching off. Like I remember there were
Yeah.
times where it was like, oh, I'm gonna be playing this game, so it's like, okay, I'll go play DS. I was like, oh, I'm gonna switch over, and then we just basically switch.
I had a friend who had a Game Boy growing up, and I never had a Game Boy, the original green big box thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I could only play it. We went to school together, so I could only play it like in the car on the way to school and back. She would let me borrow it. So when the Game Boy Advance came out, I saved up my own money and bought it before it came to the States, and I was so cool for a couple of months.
How did you go about that? How did you even?
There was an import shop for Miami people.
How old
on
are you?
72nd. I'm in high school already, I think. Or I mean either 8th grade or I'm a freshman in high school. But there was an import shop, and I worked to earn some money, and then my dad took me after school, and I traded in some other old games and put my money together, and it was like $100, and I bought it because it came out in Japan first, and they were region free.
Mm.
So I knew that I could buy a Japanese one and just set it to English, and I was good to go. So that was my first Game Boy, the Advance, and I was with them from that point on, like forever. The reason I got a PlayStation Portable was because my brother showed me how to hack it. And that was
I
like
remember that.
my second experience, because Dreamcast, I had hacked my Dreamcast too. And that's another reason why that system was so good, because it was my first experience being able to get in there and like mess with
Mm-hmm.
the tech and like customize it. So that was a big one. Like, what was it? It used those like photo sticks, like Sony, and they were super expensive. Um, you remember you used to have to save the games because they came in like
Oh yeah. There's one like on the side, and like there's like a little. It's like it was kind of like a SD, but not
yeah,
really.
not really, right? It was
Yeah.
like an SD stick.
I also thought it was interesting those cartridges.
Yeah.
That like have like on the back of the PSP where you press the button and it goes clack and it comes out, and then
Yeah,
you have
I
to
like
pull out
that.
like the
Yeah. I
small
thought that was
I
discs.
do
cool,
like
yeah.
that too.
I did like that.
I
too.
feel like there was a lot of like movies at the time where like some like the plot involves some type of like disc being stolen like for spy purposes and stuff like that.
And
So
they
when
were-
I was a kid, it reminded me, I'm like, man, I'm like the people in the movies.
you used to be able to play movies on the PSP.
Yeah, you
too.
could
Mhm.
also play movies.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they used to sell them right
Yeah,
in that
in
format.
form.
Yeah.
That special proprietary disc
Yeah.
that came in a plastic.
Man,
case.
it's crazy thinking back on it.
Yeah.
I remember, it wasn't the Game Boy Color. I think it was the Game Boy Advance
Mm-hmm.
having that like flashlight attachment.
Yeah.
So like getting up in the morning like at 6 a.m. before school and getting in the car and playing and
Yes.
like because you couldn't see the screen. There was I don't think it was backlit.
No, it was not back.
And
then.
so you had to get the flashlight attachment above it, and it's just like peering over.
it's
and-
annoying. You
Yeah.
see the reflection of it.
And it was like, but I don't remember. I think they had like a Bible cartridge.
yeah, they did.
So I would have to, like in the mornings, like my parents would be like, all right, read, like, are you reading your Bible or whatever?
Mhm.
And I'm like, yeah, I'm doing that right now. Secretly playing like Star Wars or something.
Well, that was my first like time where my two worlds intersected, because it was like my parents would drag me to church,
Mm-hmm.
and for the first time I was like, I'm taking my Game Boy Advance because that's my Bible.
You know what it was like? It's like the cartridges were like, they were like physical apps, like
Mhm.
applications.
Yeah, on a
now that
cartridge,
I was
yeah.
like, now that I'm thinking about it, it's like, it's crazy how we had to, how like we look at our phones or anything like that, like in a console, we just choose.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's we like back then we had to like physically pick it up, put it in. It's wild.
So yeah, in my opinion, I think the PSP was more innovative.
Mm-hmm.
It should have gone a lot. It should have destroyed the Nintendo DS, but children.
Yeah, I think
Nintendo
it's an,
prevails again.
yeah, because I think it's an easy sell. I think that stigma exists even till today, where it's like it's easy to get a parent to buy a Nintendo, but like they
Because
have
you
to
know the
think about
games,
it.
you know the games. You're like, oh, I don't have to
Mhm.
worry about them playing games.
It
where they
was
have-
and
and
DS was
that
cheaper?
And it was
it's
cheaper, yeah.
Yeah,
But
It's
how
like
much,
$100
you know?
cheaper.
It was
$100
$100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing, man. Well, how much was a Game Boy, a DS, like 150?
150,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because when you're $100, especially when the difference is like 200 to 300, you're like,
It's almost
Man.
like buying a console.
yeah, I could buy like 2 more games for my kid, or I could buy 2 of these for my 2 kids, and
Yeah.
it'll only be like $100 more. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And at the same time, I don't think parents like really know the difference between the two. They're just like, oh, I want this one over this
Yeah,
one.
this seems more kid
It's like
friendly.
if it's cheaper, have this one.
Yeah.
They're still gonna be spending their time on
Yeah.
it.
Right. Which is super funny too. Another thing is that because parents trust Nintendo, because you know you don't have to worry about the games, but you could totally like just kill people on Nintendo. All you know, they have mature games
Mhm.
yeah.
for those consoles. It's been a while, you know, but it's just that
Yeah,
like,
like in Trauma Center.
yes,
Just let them die.
that is a trauma.
And that's how Nintendo won that war, the handheld war.
Yeah. So we discussed the original console
That was
war.
a good transition.
Yeah. And thank you for calling him out on it. So we discussed the original console war, and we talked about the handheld war. In the wake of the original console war, I think this is where, you know, most of us got our first system. So what was the first system you played in your favorite? I'm sorry, the first system you played and the first one you owned.
The first one I ever played was SNES. Someone had it, I don't know who, and I went to their house, I think for Christmas and something
Mhm.
like that, and I played it there. But the first one that I owned, it wasn't even mine because it was my brother's. But it was ours. You get me? But
Yeah.
I should watch him play. Was the N64. We got it for one. I remember we got it for he got it for Christmas, and that's where my love for video games started because I just grew up watching my brother play.
What were some of those early memories?
Me watching him play Ocarina of Time
Mm.
and being scared of going to the town to Hyrule when you're old and seeing like those weird zombies.
Yeah.
That always terrified me. And then the other one was that when Blockbuster was around, when you could rent games.
Oh yes. Rest
My
in peace.
favorite game for the N64 was Diddy Kong Racing.
Oh wow.
But I never, like I said, it was my brother's console. I enjoyed watching him play, right?
Yeah.
So I would rent Diddy Kong Racing, and then have, hey Paul, beat this game for me. Return it. Come a month later, hey Paul,
That
beat
game
this
is
game
so
again
good.
for me, Paul. And I did that like a few times because I
Mhm.
loved watching Paul play that game.
Yeah.
You know, Link had his like own like YouTube like run throughs through the games.
Yeah, exactly. Paul was my Twitch.
Yeah, your first streamer.
Yeah, I was his first
That
streamer.
you followed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did the same thing with my.
You
brother.
also watched Link's brother.
You watched Link's
play?
brother play?
Yeah, I went. Yeah, I was there watching
So-
Link's brother play.
So that was my first experience with video games.
Yeah. Did you ever get a Diddy Kong Racing for the handheld?
I did, but it wasn't the same.
It really wasn't.
It wasn't the same. Like, first of all, Paul wasn't playing it. I had to play it. It's no fun.
Yeah, oh, it's no fun to play games. That's this generation, literally. It's no fun to play games.
Yeah.
It's funner to watch other people play.
My favorite is my niece. She watches kids play video games on YouTube with the Switch. Like she's she's
Yeah, she's
using
on
the
a
Switch,
Switch watching.
using the YouTube app, watching people
Wow.
play video games. Like, oh, come on.
I remember Diddy Kong Racing because I remember Conker was in it, and he was like cute and adorable.
Yeah, loved
and
him.
they hadn't finished developing that game, and then when they did, it was a rated M for mature game. And I remember going to Toys R Us and like having to hide from my parents that I bought the game, and they actually sold it to me, even though they weren't supposed to. And then playing that game. In
I don't think that
secret.
people ever paid attention.
Man,
No.
that Toys R Us and Kendall, man.
Yeah.
Oh,
R.I.P.
wow, the memories.
Memories.
You know what's super funny about those like video game age restriction laws? Like it was a huge thing in the 90s, like in like Congress about, game censorship
Yeah.
and
Nintendo got involved.
yeah, and then at the end of the day, like
No one
whatever,
cared, yeah.
At the end of the day, I'm in Grand Theft Auto committing my 4th robbery of the day. Like,
I am killing prostitutes.
Oh.
As a 10-year-old.
in a
In
video
the game.
in a video
In the
game,
game, in
right?
the
to be
game.
clear.
Okay,
Yeah, in the
Yeah.
game, not in real life.
Okay.
Hey, Danny, edit this out. We need
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was
Gotta
gonna make the
bleep that
cut.
out.
to,
What about you, Gabe?
for me, I think we mentioned it before. The first console that I played was the Dreamcast. It was, I think you mentioned it. Those game parties that those game
Mhm.
nights that my dad used to have, and it was like a group of like a bunch of his friends, and family would come over, and the first game I played was Soul Calibur.
Mm.
And Soul Calibur was just one of those games for me that I don't know. I love that game, and it's just the fondest memories I have playing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the first system that I personally owned, I think, was a hand-me-down from one of you guys.
Yeah,
Was the N64.
because I think we had two for some reason.
There was quite a few.
Yeah, it was
Um,
like a graveyard of consoles.
You know, and it
handhelds.
is
It is,
that it's
yeah.
that now. Like you walk into your brother's
Yeah,
room,
my
it's
brother's room.
literally just so many old consoles and games, and it's a beautiful wall.
I
to
might
be-
have stolen some games of his games and sold them.
Well, luckily he doesn't
but he
listen
did-
to
he
podcasts.
doesn't listen to this
so-
podcast, and he doesn't realize that.
This is gonna be the episode he listens
Yeah.
to.
Remember- George and I have this story where I broke his DS. Like someone broke it, and I'm like, I gotta pay for this.
That changed quickly. I broke someone
Someone-
broke.
Someone
no,
broke it.
someone broke it because I would never break a Game Boy.
Okay.
Right?
But you
A
felt
hand.
compelled to lie.
Well, it was a DS, so it wasn't a
It
Game
was
Boy.
It was a student who a camper who had issues.
You know who
Okay.
it is?
I don't know. I mean, I know his name. His name was Andy.
Shout out to Andy. You broke my brother's
No, it
DS.
was your DS.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Remember you lent
All right,
it
we're
to
coming.
me.
We're coming for you, Andy.
You
so
broke
just
it.
be ready.
No, we can't, Andy. We can't.
Oh,
we can't come
okay.
after Andy.
All right.
Anyways, so he broke it because he tripped on the how do you call it, the charger,
Mhm.
and the DS went flying out of my hand, and the screen's cracked, right?
Mhm.
So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna have to sell all my old games. So I go to Georgia, hey man, I broke this, but don't worry, I'm gonna sell my games. And you're like, okay, you know what? I think we can go to my brother's room and get some of his games and sell them. I'm like, you think we could do that? So we drive to his house. And we find some games like behind his computer desk.
Mhm.
We take them up, We sell those games, so he gets a new DS Lite.
I'm not sure this was the story I wanted you to share on air, but thank you for that link.
I don't know. I had to get it out of me. I've been holding it for like 10 years.
That was a confession, man.
Yeah. Until this day, Jonathan does not know that his Legend of Zelda Hourglass Phantom Hourglass is in. We sold it to
He does now.
GameStop.
It's in a dump in China
Yeah.
somewhere now.
But yeah, the N64 was the first one that I owned,
Mhm.
and Diddy Kong Racing, I think.
Such a good game.
But I guess the new system that I got for Christmas was probably the GameCube.
The game.
I love the game.
What a good
so
system.
much.
And you know what? We don't get enough of those games remade and re-released.
You know what? Give us re-release the original Animal Crossing.
Wave Race.
Mario
I'm
Strikers, man.
Or Mario
Mario
Strikers.
That game was-
When are they gonna give us Mario Strikers? for the
F-Zero.
I don't understand why they haven't like made
Done
a
it for
new
the
version of
Switch,
the game.
yeah.
This game was so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
I might, if that game came out, might have to buy some.
Okay.
I
You
do.
hear it here first, Nintendo. Make a Mario Strikers. You will sell one more.
You will get one more sale. Congrats.
And believe me, when you have me as a customer,
You have them for life.
you have me.
Gabe goes all in.
Yeah, I
believe
commit.
that.
He'll get 2 Switches.
That's actually that's pretty sound.
Yeah.
I would love for them to re-release the original Animal Crossing because that game,
Yeah.
That
So
game
much
was
fun.
fun.
It was good.
we lost years of our lives to that game.
Literally. Yeah. Okay. So that brings us.
Wait, what about you?
Oh, that's right.
And our producer Dan?
Oh, that's right. I forgot that he's on the call. Mine was
Oh,
a
yeah.
Super Nintendo. You're just going to be surprised every time.
I'm
Mine was
I'm
this-
staring at him through a screen.
Mine was the Super Nintendo, and Mario World was like the only game I had for
Yeah,
almost
yeah,
a
yeah.
year. We've covered this. What an amazing game, though. It was tremendous. Then Super Metroid,
Mm.
and I had a friend that had every game, so I would just borrow them from him. So that was my first console. That was the first console I ever played and that I ever had. I didn't know what video games were, as
Yeah.
I mentioned in the holiday special.
What about you, Danny Son?
The first thing I played on was a GameCube,
Mm.
and then I had a hand-me-down original Xbox. That was really like my first.
Okay.
So that
And I
brings
have no
us.
stories connected to it.
You have no
Um,
stories. You played video
apparently
games
not,
on
yeah.
it. Okay. So after that, Microsoft in the early 2000s,
Enters.
it enters the console multiverse. I don't know. It enters into the industry with the first Xbox.
And they start World War II
You know what?
for the console wars.
You're right. So what was the like? Oh, we talked about having the GameCube. So it was GameCube versus PS2 versus Xbox. What was your thoughts in this stage of the new generation of console wars?
I was a Nintendo all the way, so we had a 64. I mean, I'm sorry, we had a GameCube.
Yeah.
I had a GameCube, but I somehow managed to have a PlayStation 2 in my house,
Mm-hmm.
and that game was so much fun. That game, the console was so much fun. I remember, and I think the PlayStation 2. My step at the time, he was playing it all the time, and he played Final Fantasy. Don't remember which one it was exactly, but I would watch it all the time. And there was a similar situation where, there like there's like a charging cable for the
Yeah.
for the controller, and someone, I don't think it was me, I think it was him, had had tripped on it basically, and the PS2 just came crashing down.
Mm.
The exterior, everything looked fine, but I
inside.
think it was inside it didn't work.
And he didn't go to his brother's house.
It went to my, George's house, and there it stayed for
Yeah, the
probably the next like
graveyard.
15 years.
Yeah.
Also, you buried it. You buried it there.
Yeah.
It was it was still in the
And it's-
PlayStation box.
And it lies there to this
It's still
day.
there, right?
Yeah, I'm almost certain of it.
Oh, you should put it in your room.
Yeah, but that's what I was thinking.
I had the opposite experience. I had the GameCube, but somehow I got my parents to get me an Xbox. And I remember I didn't get to PS2.
How'd you get your parents to get you an Xbox?
I
You're so old.
I literally have no idea. I don't know how it happened.
Yeah, you were
I
like
think
in
it
high
was,
school already.
Yeah, I think it got to the point where it was like.
I love how that's old. Being in high school,
Yeah,
asking
being
No,
in
his
no, because by
parents
that
for-
time, like, you know, you could
I mean, you still get
You
stuff
still-
for Christmas on.
Yeah, I just
And birthdays.
Bro, I was a freshman in college. Hey, dude, can I have some money to buy this Xbox?
Yeah,
I graduated college. I was gifted a Switch by George and his wife.
So I got the Xbox because I had purchased a PS1 or the original PlayStation, like a secondhand one, and I had it for about a month before the little ring that holds the CD in place broke, and then I swore against Sony for the rest of my life.
To this day.
Yeah,
Wait, for what? For what?
the PlayStation 1.
Okay,
I
but then you
had
got
it.
a PSP.
Then I got a PSP because I felt like that was different though, because that was
handheld.
you know what?
Doesn't count.
After the PS Vita, I swore against Sony for the rest of my life.
Has a PlayStation 5, just like, never, Sony, never again. You're never going to get me again.
So fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame you. You just can't get fooled again. All
Good
right.
job, George. And it works both ways.
So, anyways, so I got the Xbox and I bought this is when I discovered GameStop,
Mm-hmm.
and my purchasing pattern was buy anything that was on special, like anything that was cheap, because with my parents you only got stuff for your birthday and for Christmas, and like you never just got
You don't
random
ask,
stuff.
yeah, you don't ask for
Yeah.
stuff.
So you have to like work and earn and save, like don't eat at school and then take that money to GameStop and like buy whatever games are on sale. So
That's true, man. Like the stuff you have to do to like save money when you're a kid. It's just like you form like this communal fund of like food for everyone to share.
You become so frugal.
yeah.
Yeah, and then you grow up and get a job, and it's like, man, I spend money on the randomest things.
Yeah.
I had a quick question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's fine.
For GameStop at the time, I mean, we know that it's basically a meme and a joke at this point.
Yeah.
When you would offer something around that time, would they give you like a fair amount, or was it always?
It was always
a
like
rip-off?
that.
Shortchange.
It was always like that, but you were a kid and you were stupid.
So it was still
And
a
it's
yeah,
lot
and you
to
were
you.
poor.
Yeah.
So yeah, I remember buying like a WrestleMania game
Mhm.
on day one, paying $60 for it, and it was atrocious. So I took it back the same day, and they were like, "We'll give you $20 for it."
Wait, what? As like a
No, you weren't allowed to return it.
You
Oh,
wouldn't
you
what?
opened it. You opened it.
Oh my
So
gosh.
you will buy it back from you for $20. And then the next day, it was on the shelf for $55.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And that's when I was like, GameStop! And I swore off of GameStop for the rest of my life.
You know what? And that's what you deserve, GameStop. Now you guys are struggling.
Mm-hmm. You deserve to struggle. What about you, Dan? GameCube versus PS2 versus Xbox.
Well, I mean, I joined that one late,
Okay.
10.
Well,
But
that's
again,
right.
I had
We
the
forget how much
original
younger you
Xbox.
are.
Yeah. The significant age difference. So. No, but I had the original Xbox, and
Yeah.
that was pretty much it for me until the 360 era.
That's for me the height of this. The 360 was like a game changer for me.
Yeah, that was-
And that's where the 360 and the PS3 start to really differentiate
Yeah.
like what their goals are and what their aims are.
Also,
and
also
Nintendo.
you as a gamer, I think.
Yeah, for sure. You,
have
start to create an
yeah,
identity.
You have to decide what type of gamer you're gonna be.
Yeah.
Mhm. And then Nintendo also, they go a completely other way.
That
With-
was
with the
as
Wii.
well. With the Wii,
They
yeah.
go more
Yep.
innovative and story based, I guess.
I mean the Wii, like
Wii Sports, the number one selling
Yeah.
game.
PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 are fantastic consoles, but I think that the Wii was just so different.
Yeah.
At the time, it was
I think it was, ahead,
It was
yeah,
incredible.
ahead of its time.
I think the greatest achievement is that it made gaming mainstream.
Yeah.
Like
Mm.
everyone, including your grandparents,
Had
had
Wiis.
Wiis. Like
that
was
that
incredible.
became like instead of like your family not knowing about video games at
Mhm.
holidays and birthdays
Yeah.
and get-togethers, everyone's playing Wii Sports.
Because it's so much fun. Yeah.
Everyone's getting destroyed
My
at
mom was
Wii
playing
bowling,
it.
Yeah, dads and grandpas are playing Wii golf.
boxing,
You know.
baseball.
Yeah.
The Wii Sports was huge, and then the
A
fact that
phenomenon.
it came with
The
It
game-
came-
that's
yeah,
what
it came
surprised
with
me.
yeah.
I do want to go back a little bit to the first gen war there with Xbox, GameCube, and PS2.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to point out that the PS2 destroyed everyone in sales.
Yeah.
In fact, it is still the
to this
highest.
day.
It's like the most sold console of all time.
Because its console life was so long.
Yes.
You know, and you could
And it
just
also
keep
worked
buying
as
it.
a DVD player.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the first time where you're like, oh, this is a replacement for my because I think it was called the Sony PlayStation Entertainment System, like unofficially, like on the box, and like Nintendo tried to sell that with the NES, but it didn't do anything except play Nintendo cartridges. So I don't know exactly what they were going for, but the PlayStation had media features that took it to the forefront. With that, one big sticking point that probably a lot of gamers may not remember, but me, it was like a big part, was that Microsoft decided that the 360 would support the HD DVD, and Sony decided that the PS3 would support Blu-rays.
Ah, yes.
That was huge, man.
Yeah.
Because I remember the disc boxes for the DVDs.
Yeah.
You either had a red one or a blue one.
Yep.
And like I think we had a Blu-ray player.
Yeah.
And we'd have like some of the Blu-ray discs, but like
Ironically, we had a Sony Blu-ray player.
without having a PlayStation.
Yeah.
For the Xbox, we had the red ones.
Yeah.
The red cases.
HD DVDs.
And yeah, this seems to be a bit of a misstep. You know, it's kind of unfortunate.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is what it is for Microsoft, at least.
I still have my HD DVD plugged in to my Xbox 360 in like the third room of my house. I have like kind of like the last gen consoles connected there, and I have a 360 Connect, which we'll talk about in a second.
Mm-hmm.
And that HD DVD, I got it secondhand from someone who, poor guy, he spent like $300 on a dual HD DVD Blu-ray player, so I played both of them. So he's like, "Oh, I don't need this expansion anymore." So he sold it to me for $50, and then when HD DVD went belly up, which, for the record, it was the superior format at the time. Now Blu-rays do everything that HD DVDs did at the time, but storage was better, the quality was better. But unfortunately, since everybody had a PlayStation, and since certain industries, you decided to use the Blu-ray format, the consumer market went in that direction. But I bought like every awesome movie for like a couple of bucks off Amazon at the height of it, and it was glorious having HD films on my Xbox 360.
I remember the 360 was the first console we had that wasn't Nintendo, and my brother got it. He bought it from someone on Amazon, and I'm sorry, on eBay. Action Jackson 33.
Don't let him know. What are you telling all our secrets?
And I remember feeling so betrayed. I'm like, we're a Nintendo family. Why are you getting a 360? Like, that's wrong.
And by Nintendo family, like obviously it comes as like it goes without saying, like Nintendos are always a part of the family. But literally, we as a family, when the Wii came out,
oh yeah,
we slept over
Greatest day of
on
my
the
life.
street
One of the greatest days of my
at
life.
Best Buy for that line.
We built a tent.
Yeah.
Yeah,
set
we
up
had
a
a
tent.
tent, and we were just, and it was pretty chilly for Miami temperature.
Not gonna lie though, that was pretty cool because we built a tent, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the girlfriends stayed in the tent while the
Yeah,
the
guys,
boyfriends and the guys stayed
pulling
outside.
all nighter.
the
Right,
guys
no,
were
it's
just talking out there.
Man, chivalry.
And like, I mean, you make friends along the way, like
Yeah.
with other people that are just as crazy as you are.
I think.
Hey, do you remember the guy that tried cutting in the line?
Yeah,
And everyone got mad
Yeah,
at
everyone.
him.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
yeah, man, because he's undercutting what people that stayed for hours
Hours.
overnight
Yeah.
sleeping at a place with sleeping bags.
Do you remember your dad making a friend there and then going out to watch the new James Bond movie in the middle of it
Yep.
and then returning?
I remember when I think we bought like a record number of Wii's.
Yeah.
It had to
Yeah.
have been. It was like what, like 8 or
Yeah.
No,
something.
because George, my brother, they were buying Wii's and selling them right
Yeah.
like as soon as they got out.
So
Like,
my dad had sold one, and with the money, with the profit from that sale, that's how I was able to get my 360. And the 360 for me was like growing up into it, like as a teenager, that was the super influential
Yeah.
console for me.
that's the one that got me into more mature games. Because before that, I was always playing, Nintendo games, and then now I have Call of Duty,
Call of Duty.
Madden with good graphics.
Yeah,
not
that was the first time Madden and Call of Duty. Yeah.
yeah, and that's it. Like those are the two games that I ended up playing for majority of my
I remember-
Xbox life.
I remember that's when the Rock Band obsession.
Yes, and Rock Band
The
comes out.
music games. Oh
The
my
music
goodness,
games, yeah.
man!
The amount of DLC that I purchased on the Xbox.
Still to
360.
this
That is
still
still
to this day.
compatible to this day. Yeah. So as we mentioned, the Wii with their waggle toggle, 360 and PS3 tried to combat that with
No
the
shot.
Connect
yeah.
and
No
the
shot,
PlayStation
bro.
Move.
You're not gonna beat.
Yeah. I have the 360 Connect. I think I have 2 of them now. Someone just donated to me. People just come up to me
Wasn't
and hand
it
me video
Danny?
games.
Danny?
Hey, you're the only person that talks about this. You want this?
Yeah. No, actually, Danny
you-
gave me my second Xbox One Connect, but someone just gave me a 360 Connect.
They're not like.
I think Dan saw it when he was
obviously,
going
yeah.
through my stuff in the class. It's in my classroom for some reason.
Wait. If you're listening to this and you want to donate your old handheld video games, I'll accept them.
Yes, Link is the one to give the handhelds to.
Yes.
So I had the Connect. I was into it. Dance Central won. So when I went into the Xbox One, which is the next generation, I got the Connect as well. And that brings us to that next set: Xbox One versus PS4 versus Wii U. All right, what was this stage like for you guys?
By this time I was on board with Microsoft after the 360.
Yeah.
Gave me one of my favorite games.
Backwards compatibility. Oh no, actually, it didn't launch with backwards
No,
compatibility.
it didn't,
That's
yeah.
right.
Modern Warfare 2, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2.
Yeah.
Lots of good memories and violent chat rooms. And but yeah, ever since then, like 360 with Rock Band and everything, I think our family was a major
Yeah, we
like
turned-
aside from Nintendo, I think personally for me, I was still buying the DS year to
Mhm.
year, but I could tell as time was like moving forward, I was turning more to console.
Yeah.
And especially like the 360, and I think that's where the 360s where I was able to start playing socially, which that's what kind of led to me getting an Xbox One, because the Xbox One I believe had been out for like 2 years, and
Mhm.
I wasn't really playing. I was in college. I'd gone to college, and I wasn't really playing games at
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing happened to me. Like with the 360, I started playing socially because my friends started getting it. We'd play Call of Duty.
Yeah.
But I do remember that in the original Xbox, watching my brother and George's brother and their friends playing socially
Halo 2.
on Halo 2 on
Halo 2,
landlines.
man.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, wow, that was always impressive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the LAN parties.
Those LAN parties,
like,
yeah.
people coming. Like you guys had projectors up.
Mm-hmm.
Like 5 to 6 TVs.
Mm-hmm.
It was beautiful.
It was beautiful.
Man, the Halo games too.
Default.
So great. But yeah, at that time I had an Xbox One. A lot of my friends did have the PlayStation 4.
Mm-hmm.
I could tell it was very popular, but I mean, at that point in time, I was a diehard. Like, I'm with Microsoft. I'm with the Xbox.
Same.
You know, you brought up a good point about buying this console like after the fact. I think with the 360 era, this is where I start to wait because the prices for these consoles get more and more expensive.
Yeah.
And I think
They were-
I'd buy the Nintendo at launch always because they're so cheap. And we talked about that like
If they're available.
yeah, well, I've always managed to get one, but so I always have
Oh,
bought
okay.
them right away. But I've always waited, I think, in these past generations for the consoles to kind of pick up some steam before I make that jump to the next gen. I don't know if it's been the same for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you can't even find a PS5 or
In
Xbox
this
Series
recent
X
in this recent gen, I think things have changed.
with the chip shortage.
Yeah, I
It's hard to
mean,
find.
Mm-hmm.
trying to get a PS5 nowadays has been extremely tough. It's been stressful.
Mm-hmm.
I've been able to get two of them for different people. One of them, luckily for myself. But I can't tell you the frustration
Yeah.
it is to be waiting in line for hours based on rumors and like whispers that people that you hear on Twitter and stuff like that, having to follow accounts for notifications to
Yeah.
see, and having like going to websites and trying to find links that
But having bots come and scrape them all up.
exactly.
ahead
It's
of
like
time.
by the
Bots
time
are
like
worst.
at the time the countdown hits 0 and they're open for sale, like you can even have it in your cart.
Yeah.
And I remember this couple of times. I had it in my cart. Error, refresh, error. This thing is sold out.
Back in my day, us scalpers had to sleep in a tent overnight on the floor.
Exactly.
Outdoors.
Commitment, man. Now people just set up programs to just
Weak.
buy all this stuff.
Weak. You know, I have yet to find someone. I have yet to know someone who has an Xbox Series X. I don't think none of my friends have it.
I think Danny's brother has one.
S. He has a Series S.
Oh,
S.
You didn't
oh
go-
yeah,
I
I
mean,
know
it's
the
still
S.
It's
Yeah.
still next gen.
No, but I know people have the S, but I don't know
Oh,
anyone
okay.
that has an Xbox Series X.
Why do you think
I
that
don't know
is?
anyone who has an X. Either.
I don't know because I thought
You think it's the extra $100 or?
it could be, and the fact that there's I
No,
still don't
I
Oh,
see
it's
them
just
anywhere.
harder.
No,
It's
there's-
easier to get the S Series S.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I
no, they're still
don't-
tough. The Series X is
It's
still
still hard
tough.
to find,
It's
yeah.
still tough
Right.
to get as well as
But you can get a Series S like when they do go in.
Yeah, because I'm ready to buy one whenever I can find one.
yeah.
Really?
But I
One
don't
thing,
know.
You're gonna
but
get
I
an
think
X?
I mean, now that I upgraded my TV, yeah.
I'm
you upgraded your TV.
Yeah.
What'd you get?
What did I don't know. You got a TV.
You
that's,
check the stats with the variable refresh rate. and
What
all that?
brand?
Yeah.
Samsung
120?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh snap! Okay.
Mhm.
2.1 HDMI something.
Yeah. I also readied my TV
Just
for
for
the,
the-
next gen, but I'm still waiting to get those
Yeah.
games that I can only play in that experience. And also I don't want to have to work for like what $500 purchase. How much is it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, cuz I'm ready. I have an Xbox One X, so I have to go straight to the Series X.
Exactly.
The S will be like a sideways.
Exactly.
And
yeah,
those,
same.
and I mean, I think that's one other thing that we haven't really talked about is, excuse me, the updated versions of the same like console.
Yes,
Like,
that's right.
like instead of an Xbox
The
One, you
Slim,
have the
the
X. Yeah,
Pros,
you have
the-
the yep. And that, I mean, that's what I'm on now with my Xbox. I have an Xbox One X, right?
You have an Xbox One
The
X.
one that you-
That's correct. Yes.
I mean, these Microsoft with these names, man.
Yeah.
Xbox One, Xbox One S, Xbox Series X, Xbox Series S.
I have the white one. I don't know what that is.
That's the One S.
Yeah. And and then I also have a PlayStation 5, which
Flex.
is
That's what I want. Mine.
I don't know. I mean, we'll get into that conversation about like
It's
exclusives
just-
and
it's
stuff
just
like
sitting
that.
on your shelf.
But
I don't know. Ghost of Kushida. I was playing at your house when you were working that other day. So good.
that's
can,
the thing.
You can play that on a PS4.
And I mean, that's the thing. Well, there are differences, but
Yeah, they are
yeah,
different.
yeah.
I mean, I'm not disparaging PlayStation. I also feel that way about the Series X. You can play it on a One X.
I mean, I can't play Cyberpunk on my whatever I have. White
it'll
Xbox.
blow
Have you
up.
tried it? Because I have an extra copy.
No, I don't want
Take
to.
it. Try it.
No. I have too many video games on my.
I have a
backlog.
friend who played Cyberpunk in 30-minute session, and he's like, "It's good. It keeps my marriage together because, like, at the 30-minute mark, the game crashes, and I go, okay, it's good. It's time for me to go to sleep, to go to bed." Oh.
Yeah. And I think the trajectory that I went in for gaming was definitely of the social aspect.
Mm-hmm.
I just enjoy playing with my friends, and that's kind of what fueled the decision to try and go after a PlayStation, because many of my friends decided to either jump ship or continue on with
Yeah.
Sony,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean I'm not saying it's without its perks. I do like some of the exclusives, like the Spider-Man games,
Absolutely.
which is some of my favorite games.
Amazing.
It's incredible. Like Link was saying, Ghost of Tsushima.
Ghost
Tsushima?
of Kushida. Kushida.
That's making
And-
me hungry.
Some of those exclusives
Talk about after this.
talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
talk about after this.
Some of these
You can order where you are, Dan.
Yeah, I guess.
some of these exclusives obviously like sweeten the pot.
Yeah.
But for me it's really heavily based on what my friends are getting, so we can all play together. But with the advancement of cross-platform gaming,
Oh, that's what we
Um,
should go to, man.
I think-
oh my goodness.
I think it's been a huge, like with Fortnite, being able to play, like that was
That's
probably the first
beautiful.
one that
Mm-hmm.
I was able to play with my friends who had PlayStation,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just like, to me it was crazy to
Wasn't
even
there another game that did before Fortnite?
probably.
Was it the soccer one?
I mean, Rocket League.
There you go. That
Yeah.
soccer card game.
Yeah, I realized that I wasn't good at Rocket League when a lot of my friends played it. I'm like,
Yeah,
this,
same.
this isn't
same,
gonna be the
this
one I'm
isn't-
gonna be
Yeah.
into.
Yep, same.
My timing just, it's not there. I keep missing it. I keep scoring own goals.
It's two things I hate:
Yeah.
soccer and racing games
Oh,
combined.
Well, I love both of those things.
Unless it's Mario
but
Strikers.
I'm just no good at it. But I lived vicariously by actually coaching an esports league that Dan was a member of.
Yes.
Were you
I'm
the
so
star
proud of
player?
that. I
Were you the
was
star
not.
E player?
No, the star E player used to destroy the opposition and then turn around and start scoring goals on our team. Oh, I thought Dad was gonna jump in with an anecdote there, but I guess not.
Sorry, I
Trauma.
tried to
No,
forget
it's-
my-
yeah,
Yeah,
trauma.
it's
It's pain.
I try to forget my time in high school. I've been doing a good job.
It's just a blur.
Now Dan likes to say that. Like I was watching I think I was watching Naruto, and then I'm like, bro, why is this character doing this? Like, and he would just text me, trauma.
Trauma.
That's it. And he would say like 5 or 6 times after I'd complain about different things, trauma.
Maybe we're worried about you, Dan. Maybe you should seek out help.
So it's
This
funny.
is a safe space.
It's funny how we were talking about the last generation, but it just bled into current gen because there is so much similarities. The libraries are kind of becoming singular among the brands, the Sony library and the Microsoft library. The one thing is, this was the Wii U last generation was the first one that you didn't get, right?
Yo, I didn't get it either.
You didn't get it either.
No,
Luke?
remember you lent it to me?
Yeah, he would just come over to my house
Yeah,
and
I'm
play and then take
I'm
it.
not gonna lie. Like the Wii U is like what, like an Xbox One S, like an
No, everybody thinks that. That's
No,
what the problem
the
with.
Wii U is actual. Like,
It's a new
new console.
Yeah, it's the next generation, and
The
it
marketing
is
was horrible.
backwards compatible.
So like a 360 to a 1.
Yeah, exactly. But the marketing was so bad because the name. Here's the thing. I understand what they were going for. If we use the name Wii, everybody will think they'll need the new Wii. But what it made everyone think is that they already had a Wii,
yeah.
and they couldn't play any of the new
Should have
games.
just called it New Wii.
That's why they switched it up.
I mean,
Wii
Yeah.
U.
But wouldn't you say that could also happen with Xbox and the PlayStation?
I think it does happen.
It still
PlayStation.
happens.
Oh, so you're telling me poor children are.
Yes,
So you're
last
telling me-
Christmas they sold out of every Series S and Series X, but they also sold out of every 1S and 1X.
Thinking
that
they
actually
were
happened.
Yeah.
upgrading.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah, that actually.
I
literally
remember
happened.
that when the Xbox had come out, they had sold out of the old systems, and people were like, "Man, I got this so easy. Why are you guys complaining? You got the wrong system, man. I'm sorry."
Yeah, a bunch of kids were like, "I have
Disappointed
this
for
one
Christmas.
already."
Yeah.
Okay, that was one thing I guess that also happened. I started going on Facebook Marketplace, and I just had a trend of flipping Xboxes that people
Yeah.
would sell me. Like, oh, my kids didn't want this, so here you go. They gave me a brand new Xbox One S.
Yeah.
Well, it was opened and
Mhm.
and tried, but with like 4 or 5 games, 2 controllers, and I'm like, you're giving this all for $130?
Yeah.
Okay,
I
thank
mean,
you.
That happened with me too, which is why I have 2 Xbox Ones and 1 in my classroom. So I have 3 Xbox Ones.
How much would you sell it for afterwards? That what you bought?
The Xbox itself, I would sell for like $150. The controllers a piece, I would sell for $40. The games I'd throw in to sweeten the pot for the Xbox.
Okay.
A nice
So that
side
brings us-
hustle.
Yeah.
It funded my gaming monitor, my TV, my soundboard, basically my entertainment system on what I have now.
Nice.
Maybe I should do that.
Okay. So the Wii U was a failure. The Switch is a huge success.
I love the Switch.
Everyone here has it except for Gabe.
because
Mario
they haven't made
Strikers.
Mario Strikers.
Yeah,
yet.
he's waiting his whole thing out. He's like,
Mami Miyamoto.
I have 2. Well, technically me and my wife, but
I want to get to that level.
what is there to say? The Switch is a household item. Like almost everybody has it. It's still flying off the shelves. I think a big part of what's going on now, it's not so much a console war, but it's a content war.
Is where we're going. Yep.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that has to do with the recent acquisitions. A lot of money's being moved around.
Yeah, man. It's literally an arms race at this point.
Yeah, that's fair. Man, you have got some very good geopolitical metaphors.
All of us, guys. It's a team
today.
effort.
Yeah.
I haven't said any.
Yeah, you said World War One.
Oh
Yeah,
yes,
and then he
yes.
piggybacked.
History buff.
You are amazing.
Thank you, man. Sometimes I kind of forget that.
You're amazing.
I love you guys.
It's hard to believe, but thanks.
So, what have these recent accusations been?
Accusations. Okay.
What are the recent accusations?
Here are
What
my
has
qualms
Sony
with
done?
Sony. I'm just kidding. I guess the biggest one in recent history is, which just happened a couple of weeks ago, is Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard.
I
Yeah.
mean, first Bethesda.
Yeah, that was a
Bethesda,
huge one.
yeah, that's
How much did they buy it for?
7.
Yeah, that's right. It was like 7.5 billion.
What?
7.5
More
billion.
than
Yeah,
Activision?
7.5
More than
billion,
Activision?
No, Activision was like
Activision was like
68. Yeah, 68.
the sale is like
Yeah.
75 billion.
Yeah.
What? I
Yes.
got the wrong number.
What?
From
This
Reddit.
is crazy.
And I only know this like tangentially, but from what I have understood, what they did was buy up shares, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
they bought
Yeah.
shares.
So it wasn't like we're buying the company. They literally just bought the shares, which gave them control.
We
control the
Yeah,
company.
Majority, right?
What does Blizzard? I mean, sorry. What does Bethesda do?
Bethesda does
Skyrim,
well
Oblivion.
because they didn't just
Okay,
buy
there you go, there you go,
Bethesda.
there you
They
go.
bought ZeniMax Studios, which owns Bethesda.
Yeah.
But it's what did you mention again?
like the Skyrim games, Oblivion. Like Skyrim is wildly successful.
you're
They
right.
got Doom. They got Castlevania.
Fallout.
Oh,
Dang,
They
you
have,
right.
sold me there.
they have Fallout. They basically have every like
But-
mature
You know,
title
a lot of those games I've never
for the
played.
Xbox.
Like Skyrim, never played it.
They're
Well,
really,
they're
they're
all-
really good.
They're
man.
all on Game Pass now.
That's true, and I do have that.
That's another thing. Game Pass, man. Like Microsoft right now, in my opinion, Microsoft
Chef's
is
kiss.
killing it.
Exactly.
And with these acquisitions, the future is looking very bright for
Or
them.
the Netflix of gaming. That's what
Yeah.
they said they wanted to be, and that's what
Dang.
they're doing.
You know
Just
what's
hope
funny
they
though
produce
that
better content.
their model drove me and Danny in different directions though. Because for me, I double down and I'm getting the next Xbox. I have multiple Xboxes in my home. I built a PC so that I could play my Game Pass games. But Dan's going in another direction. Why is that, Dan?
No, I dropped it completely because now I can play everything on my PC. So what's the point?
The superior machine.
What is the point? Why am I getting an Xbox? Now, I'm just a console gamer, to be honest with you. Like, having the box set up to my TV, like, we've talked about the social aspect, and that's a big, like, pick up and play type experience. And we have that beautiful LG TV that I can switch, like, from the Xbox to my app interface that goes
magic
over.
remote too,
it's-
man.
Yeah, it
It's lit.
overlays over my Xbox. So that's where I'm at. Like,
Links here nodding in Samsung.
although Dan, I will back you up in the sense that I've heard that Sony is looking into creating their own competitive service,
Yeah.
kind of fusing PS Now and PS Plus, and I will subscribe to that on day one, but I won't buy a PlayStation. So I guess I'm on the opposite side of that. Like, I would be very intrigued to get access to those,
Never again, Sony.
See though,
oh yeah, I just said that, didn't I?
I really do enjoy my PlayStation 5.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's just, I mean, it looks like a router ate another router.
It looks like if the Lord, it's like Isengard, or the other tower, the Eye of Mordor became a router.
No, it's like if the two towers had a
Had
child.
Yes.
But like fed it obscene amounts of food every day.
I think
Because the
that's
thing,
the
it's
ugliest.
so
So
it's
fat,
so
man.
big.
It's so
I didn't know it
ugly.
was that big, man.
It was like if Disney needed to also redesign Boba Fett's ship after renaming it. It looks like it flies on its side. The PS.
That was another thing, man.
5.
I feel like a lot of people, especially on social media, became so involved with the console wars.
Mm-hmm.
Like you like going back to the tribalism of PlayStation versus Xbox, and you have people insulting other people.
Mm-hmm.
That's so
like,
not nice.
There's like
Too far.
people are mean.
really mean.
Yeah.
People make like so many like
But
just
you can't read the comments, man.
they make so many bad jokes, and it's really
I used to be like that in middle school.
So I read a pro tip on Life Tips that said just assume that everyone on the internet is 13 years old, and it all made sense. It
Yeah.
clicked for me. I was like, that makes a lot of sense.
yeah. When I beat people at FIFA online and they're just like cursing at me and shouting obscenities,
Mm.
they either are 13 years old.
Yeah.
And some-
Or Randy Orton. I like that Dan disc that.
That's a reference I don't get.
Yeah, wait.
Oh, not even Link.
Oh, is it
He
when
said
he got
some
in trouble?
inappropriate things.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh, yeah,
while
yeah.
streaming on Twitch.
That's
Yeah.
another thing.
Yeah.
Streaming is a whole other
Oh,
beast.
yeah.
Sure. We should do an episode.
Yeah. In fact, I think this is how we got the idea for this episode. We covered it in our S4 monthly episode last week. Check it out if you didn't. We started.
Fantastic episode.
Yeah. Okay. We kind of responded to the news of that Activision acquisition. We talked a little bit about it, but I think that's what kind of got this started because this is a new frontier for gaming. It's almost like a new horizon. What do you guys see the future of gaming being?
I think that the future of gaming should be cross play. What is it?
Cross-platform.
Cross-platform?
Like, who cares if you have a PlayStation?
Cross platform, and it has to be more portable. I think that Xbox and Sony should go portable.
That's
Like a
not gonna
Switch?
happen.
Like a Switch?
Find a way to be portable. I don't know.
They're
Do
not
you
gonna
think
compete
that-
with the Switch. With the Switch.
I know they can't.
I mean,
compete.
I made my Xbox 360 portable. I just carried it in a suitcase everywhere.
Well, you know
when I
what?
was
That's
traveling.
true. XCloud makes your
Egg-
pull up your
the
iPad,
iPad, yeah.
connect it
But
to
it's-
your
I
Xbox
think that- I think that-
controller.
I
That-
think
yeah, that's what I
that's
was
the
gonna say.
future.
I
Yeah.
think that's the future.
Portability is the
gaming, yeah.
future.
Yeah,
Cloud-
cloud gaming is the future of
Because
portability.
many
They're not
people-
gonna make their own hardware.
Cloud gaming, which I think is what I think Microsoft is
Is trying to
investing
do,
in.
yeah.
Yeah,
And I think
Heavy.
PlayStation what's been their bread and butter and what's gotten them a lot of sales is their exclusives.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But I think that another direction that we're going in is buying all these publishers, buying all these people that make games, either Sony or Microsoft, because I believe Sony bought Bungie, correct?
that's right. That's something we didn't get to cover because that literally just broke after our episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. What? How much was it?
3.6
3.5.
billion.
there we
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
That's where I
3.6,
got that.
3.5.
But yeah.
Oh yeah, that the 3.5
I
or
feel
6
like-
or something.
What does
3.6,
Bungie do?
6.
Which I believe is a bit. I
Destiny.
believe they overpaid a bit, but
I also
You never
feel
know.
like it's inflated, but
We had
Um,
this conversation, our group chat.
yeah.
Like when
I
it's
don't
just
remember this.
numbers, it's about as like 1-to-1 as the Bethesda purchase.
I disagree. You're gonna tell me that 3.6 for the last 12 years they've made Destiny and Destiny 2. You
They
think that's
make
1-to-1?
5 Well,
yeah, versus
told you
Call
the
of
number.
Duty,
They make-
World of
Oh,
Warcraft.
You're talking about monetary, yeah.
yeah, I'm just talking.
You're talking about
numbers.
revenue coming in?
Well, you know what
Yes.
though? Maybe you're right. You're right that, and I fought you hard on this in the chat, but I think maybe you're right because Sony and Microsoft are playing two different games. If Sony can make with that one game as much money as Microsoft makes with a dozen games,
Exactly. That's
then-
yes.
then that's what they want. But Microsoft needs a library of games to sell Game Pass.
It's a different. They're each
Ecosystem.
having it's two different strategies.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right.
Yeah, but Bungie better be bringing something.
Well,
Fantastic.
supposedly we
I
got
mean,
a new
that-
game in 2 years, supposedly. No, 3, 25.
We'll see how that goes.
With an unproven staff.
Yeah, they've had a few exits since Destiny 2, but I mean, stranger things have happened. Infinity Ward has changed their lineup and then reconstructed it, and they move on. I mean,
Mike-
see.
potential
Microsoft is
for new
scheming.
talent.
Microsoft is scheming, and I'm sure Sony probably isn't worried, to be honest.
Mhm.
And neither is Nintendo.
Also,
Nintendo's in a ballpark of their own. Man.
yeah, they're not.
You
What's
can't
the last
compete.
acquisition they made? Take-Two
You can't
Interactive.
compete,
Like, yeah, they got their own thing going. So, the horizon is set before us. New lands to journey to, new adventures to go on, new characters to embody. The stories we tell through gaming, they're more fantastical than our everyday life. But sometimes we're doctors and economists and just life simulations as well. Some of us lead super exciting lives in the real world. Some of us live humdrum everyday lives. But gaming, like all art, is a reflection of the gamut of experiences that we go on through our lives. Many of us were born into gaming, and many of us will die gaming. And as we continue to evolve as a civilization, so does the way that we play games. Games is another form of storytelling. And whether it's the ancient Greek Olympics, or whether it's a joystick or a joypad or motion sensors, we continue to break new ground and look off into that horizon for new boundaries to expand through. And as we continue to explore the limits of those boundaries, we ask you to join us week to week as we keep on searching. Have a good week.